Hello, and thank you for tuning on to another episode of our scripture breakdown ministry. My name is David Abraham, and our scripture for today comes from Galatians 2, verse 20, and it reads, I have been crucified with Christ. I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. I repeat, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. The life I live now in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. Now, I want to divide the scripture into 4 parts. And the first part says, I have been crucified with Christ. Now, before I go ahead, I'd like to say now this was the Apostle Paul, one of the apostles in the Bible, who was addressing the Galatians. And the Galatians was the people of the Asian Minor region who are now, which is now Turkey. So Apostle Paul was addressing them at that time. Now this was shortly before Galatia became a province of the Romans. So he said, I have been crucified with Christ. So here Apostle Paul was saying that they have been crucified with Christ. I have been crucified with Christ. That is Christ. He was referring to the crucifixion of Christ at that point in time. He said, and I no longer live. So he was being crucified with Christ because shortly after the crucifixion of Christ, Christ died. So here, this was the spiritual significance of the crucifixion of Christ. So he had been crucified with Christ. So he said, I no longer live. So because of the death of Christ, we also, as children of Christ, as children of God, as followers of Christ, died with Christ on the cross. That means our old self was dead. So we died with Christ on the cross. Then he said, but Christ lives in me. So when we died with Christ, because Christ, after his death, he also experienced a resurrection. Here he speaks about the resurrection of Christ. He said, but Christ lives in me. So we died with Christ. That is speaking about the old man, the death of the old man in Christ. And the resurrection is the being born again, the being born anew. So Christ lives in us. Christ lives in me. And Christ lives in every born again Christian on the face of the earth. Then said, the life I now live in the body. So the life he now lives in the body because he is alive. His old man is dead and died with Christ, and his new man has been born again, and Christ now lives in him. So the life I now live in the body, because the actions and the visions and the sights and the dreams of the spirit is what in turn manifests in the physical body, manifests in the physical earth, because the spiritual governs the physical. So he said, the life I now live in the body, I live by faith in the Son of God. So the life that he lives in the body, he lives by faith. Now this is a man who has totally dedicated his body, spirit, and soul to God, who is totally conscious of the fact that there is a master called Jesus, and he is under the subjection and followership of the person of Jesus, that he's under total control of the person of Jesus, and he believes in the word that says, I live by faith. So he said the life that he lives is a life by the faith in God. So he lives by faith in Christ. He lives by the faith of the followership of God. He lives by the faith of the movement of God. He lives by the faith of the person of Jesus, who is the author and the finisher of our faith. So I live by faith in the Son of God. So he continually lives his life by faith. Faith by instruction, faith by action, faith by obedience, faith by moving from one point to another in the fulfillment of the will of God for our lives. So he said he lives by faith. He said, who loved me and gave himself for me. So in turn, for the fact that God loved us and God exhibited faith. He said, according to John 3:16, it says, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life." So God sent his Son to die for us. And that was an action of faith. Because Jesus was born, that was an action. Jesus gave his life. Jesus came, he started his ministry at 33 years old. That was an action. Jesus was crucified. That was an action. Jesus was buried. That was an act of faith from God. So God gave his Son, who loved us. Because of the love propelled us. So as faith is action, love is also action. So God used the act of love and faith to bring forth his Son to die for our sin. So also we live by faith in turn for the love God has showed for us, and for the faith God has showed to us through the bringing forth of his Son. We also in turn live by faith as the children of God, or we should live by faith as the children of God, or we should live by faith to be continually justified by God, to be continually endorsed by God every day. We exhibit our faith. The Bible in Hebrew, in the book of Hebrew, it says, without faith it is impossible to please God, that he that comes to God must believe that he is, first of all, and that he is a rewarder of them who earnestly, who diligently, who in a hard-working manner seek him, because he is God. Now I want to pray that God is able to expand our minds on this word, that God is able to give us more revelational knowledge, that we will be able to walk with it and run with it, that ultimately God is able to bolster up our faith level and to give us more faith, the grace for more faith, the grace for more obedience to instruction, the grace for a holy living, and the grace to be able to expect and take actions of love and take actions of faith to reap and collect our rewards in Christ. All these I ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. I thank you so much for listening. And God bless in Jesus' name. Amen.